So, I meant to play this game a little bit earlier, however, when it came out, I wasn't home. But anyway, regardless, I've finally gotten through Kirby in the Forgotten Land, plus Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, plus Star Cross Worlds, say that 5 times fast. Nintendo, as usual, great at naming stuff. Anyway, let's move on to the actual DLC. So, in case you don't know, for whatever reason, I'm sure you do, this is a $20 DLC pack that you can get as an upgrade. And basically you get a bunch of new content, but on top of that, for the base game, it also runs at a higher resolution and a better frame rate. Now, I always really liked Kirby in the Forgotten Land. I always thought that the game ran really nicely as is. You know, it wasn't 30 frames on Switch 1, but it was very, very smooth. The gameplay itself felt a little bit slow, but I still felt that, like, overall, the game was still fun to play. I didn't really have any issues with it. It's actually one of my favorite Kirby games of all time, if we're going to be quite honest. I love just seeing Kirby actually move around in a 3D space, and it works super, super well. So being able to see that in a 60 FPS with a higher resolution, 1440p, so I guess 2K, is just great. And now that I've played it for a few hours, I think it'd be kind of hard to go back to the original version, which, you know, duh, if you play a game at a higher resolution, it's going to run and feel better to play, of course. But I didn't realize how much this game really benefits from being 60 FPS. It actually makes the gameplay feel a little bit faster, which is really nice. Because that was really one of my, like, only big gripes with the original version on Switch 1, is just the fact that it felt like it was kind of playing in slow motion. Not that it was necessarily a bad thing, but regardless, it's just really, really nice to get that frame rate boost and the resolution boost. Now, in terms of new content, there's really not a lot. I'll be able to talk about pretty much all of it. So the main thing is that you get 12 new levels. I almost want to, like, reiterate on new, because some of the levels takes bits and pieces from older stages and kind of just, like, redesigns them, or they, like, add new paths and new areas to them. It's kind of interesting the way that they did it. It actually flows really, really well, and I really liked the levels. I personally found that the more that the level deviated from the original version, the more that it changed and tried new things, the more fun and more enjoyable that it was. Just because I've already played through Forgotten Land a couple of times. So just seeing brand new levels and just, you know, being able to, like, smack the crystals and create paths as you go, something about that was super satisfying. It was just really, really nice. In terms of enemies, there's not really any new ones. There are a couple of new bosses, but the only new enemies you're going to find is just the older ones, but they have, like, these crystals on their head and are a little bit harder to suck up. I guess they take a little more damage to actually, like, take out, but for the most part, they're all pretty much the same thing. And it's interesting that this kind of almost drew a comparison to, like, Bowser's Fury, how all of those enemies in that game were pretty much the same from Mario 3D World, except they all had, like, cat ears or something related to a cat, you know, a cat tail, whatever it may be. I guess this is kind of a similar parallel, which I found to be a little bit interesting, but that's not really the new stuff. There is this new mid-boss called Galactal. He's like this big crystal dude, and he can, like, spawn, like, these crystal meteors. He can create crystal spikes out of the ground, and he's a little bit different from pretty much every single boss because he doesn't have a life bar. The main difference is that you basically just have to hit him enough times, and then a little piece of his crystal will break off. And then you just keep doing that until he's completely defeated. That's the whole point of the mid-boss. It's fine. We're also going to be talking about final boss stuff, so I guess I'll say spoilers, although a lot of this stuff really isn't anything that crazy. The big new final boss that you'll play after completing all 12 levels is called, I'm going to butcher this, Genwell Medianolophilis. I don't know how to say that, but it's basically another version of Elphilis, which is pretty cool. You know, I always found this to be a really, really strong and fun boss in the original game as well. So basically getting, like, a new version with new attacks and stuff is really, really neat. And it's not even just this boss that has new attack patterns. When you play the brand new Ultimate Cup Z Extra version, every single character has new attack patterns, which is just awesome. And not only are they new, a lot of them are harder to avoid. I actually haven't completed the Ultimate Cup Z Extra. I am working on that right now. I'll probably beat it later today, but anyway, it definitely makes the bosses a little bit harder, and I just love that they actually went out of their way to really try to freshen up as much of the original material as they could with this game. So yeah, the new bosses are cool. In terms of copy abilities, there aren't any new ones, and I've heard a lot of people say that they're a little disappointed about this, but for me, I honestly didn't mind that much, and that's because we get 3 new Mouthful Modes, and you use these Mouthful Modes quite a bit in all 12 of these levels, so I don't know, to me, I felt like that was kind of good enough. Like, it would, obviously, I would have liked to have gotten at least 1 or 2 brand new copy abilities, especially since this is the first game where you can like properly upgrade them and stuff, and it's awesome, but I'm honestly fine with all of the new Mouthful Modes. So we'll just go ahead and talk about all 3 of them. We'll start with Spring Mouth, pretty much just Spring Mario, or the, I was going to say not the zebra, there's the Snake Bonanza from Donkey Kong Bonanza. I don't know what it is with Nintendo, but they're just like obsessed with springs in their games, and this is another Nintendo game where you're in a 3D platformer and you can bounce like a spring. Yeah, you know, actually, I did kind of like Spring Mouth. It was probably, when it comes to the 3 like different games I brought up, I actually think the spring mechanics work best in this game in particular, because when you're smashing down or trying to get a lot of height, Kirby will kind of like stick to the ground faster if you're relatively close to the ground, so you have a little bit more control of your actual movement when you're moving around, and just the general movement in the air also feels really nice. So I like Spring Mouth, not my favorite one, but it's not bad. Then there's Gear Mouth. This one is used in a lot of really cool ways. Basically, you just turn into a big gear, and you can run across walls, you can jump and cling onto stuff, cling onto signs and things like that. I really like Gear Mouth a lot. And it's one of those things where, like, you look at the gameplay of it, and it doesn't look that fun to use, but when you're actually controlling it, it's pretty solid. I really liked Gear Mouth, and it was used in a lot of really clever ways in the levels, too. And then, finally, there is Sign Mouth, where Kirby turns into a sign, and you just play a slide level from, like, you know, Mario 64 or Mario Galaxy 2 or something. That's pretty much what Sign Mouth is. What is kind of interesting is that because the sign itself is like so bulky, it feels like they added some sort of like weird sense of drag. So like as an example, if you're doing like a sharp turn or something, Kirby will kind of lag a little bit when he's like turning the other direction. It's a little bit interesting how they went about it this time, but I actually think it works really well considering that Kirby literally transforms into a big bulky sign. So I like that they like purposefully made the controls a little bit stingy. I think it actually works really well, and it makes going down the slide and nailing all the shortcuts and the crystals a lot more gratifying when you do actually pull it off. So yeah, that's pretty much all the new content. I guess, you know, I did already kind of talk about the Ultimate Cup Z Extra a little bit, but basically, you know, it's the same thing again. It's the tourney mode. Something I would actually love to know in the comments, because I forgot if this is a thing in the original game or not. But whenever I would die, I had the option to actually just retry from where I lost. And I basically had to use like 100 of the star coins for the first retry. And then if you die again, it doubles the amount that's required to retry. I don't remember if you could do this in the original game. And I find that to be kind of interesting because, you know, for one, I don't remember that being a thing in the original, but 2, it does kind of take away a lot of, I would say a lot of the challenge, just because, like, well, you know, if you're stuck on a boss and let's say you're holding onto like a Maxim tomato or something, like I was at one point, you can basically just, you know, like just like brute force your way through until you get to like the final boss or something, because, you know, when you die and you hit retry, as long as you have enough star coins, then you're basically able to just reset with full health. So, found that to be kind of interesting. And again, it might have been like that in the original game. I don't remember. I'm not sure. But, yeah. I'm trying to think if there's really anything else that's new to the game. Like, I think there probably are a few other really, really minor things, but In terms of if this is worth 20 bucks, I'm seeing a lot of people say that this isn't really worth the price just because like there's not a lot of content. You know, if you're not trying to 100% the game, if you're just playing the levels, maybe trying out the tourney mode, you're only going to get 2 to 3 hours out of it. But if you are trying to 100% and you got to replay stuff to get stories that you miss along the way, you'll probably get a good 5 to 6, maybe 7 hours out of it, something like that. So for $20, I mean, I would actually say it really depends how much you like the original game. Because I think if you have not played Kirby in the Forgotten Land yet, this is the time to do it. Pitch in that extra 20 bucks because basically, you know, all the levels are tied in with the main game. It all just like works in tandem. And I think there's a lot of value when it comes to that. But if you've already played Forgotten Land and maybe you didn't care that much for it, is it really worth shelling out 20 bucks? Maybe not. I would say that in terms of like how much new content there actually is, this is probably more of a like $5 to $10 thing, but like it's weird, right? It's so weird to talk about prices with the Switch 2 because I have no idea what the discourse is anymore. Some people have completely normalized the $70 price tag for their games. Some people haven't. I personally am not a fan of games jumping up to 70 bucks, but there's not like a lot of extra content. It's just kind of like, oh, you get the same amount of playtime and value as you would with Switch 1 games, but now they're just more expensive. And like, you know, obviously games have been at 60 bucks for a long time. The price is going to have to go up eventually because of rising development costs, but you know, passing that cost on to the consumer and getting to a point where it's really becoming more and more unattainable to just be able to play Switch 2 games, period. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I really don't know how I feel about that. But let's go ahead and end the video. If you watched the previous one, I think I did like I talked about Drag and Drive. I started putting together like a tier list for every single Switch 2 game. So let's go ahead and work on the tier list and throw the Star-Crossed World on there. All right, so here we are. So I think what I did last time was I wanted to kind of rank the game based on like the entire package and not just the DLC itself, which is why I have Jamboree plus Jamboree TV so high up on the list. I definitely think Forgotten Land is a better game than Jamboree TV. I would actually argue it's maybe even better than Mario Kart World. Now, is it as good as Tears of the Kingdom? I don't know. I definitely have my my qualms with Tears of the Kingdom, but I would still say overall it's a much more ambitious and just like, I don't know, just a more ambitious game overall and has a lot more to offer compared to a Kirby title. So I'm thinking what we're going to do is we're actually going to put this right above Mario Kart World. Now that might seem a little crazy, and you know what? I might end up moving it eventually, but hey, that's just how this goes. This is my initial just impression of the game. But you know what? Hey, maybe as the years go on, once we reach 2029, I'll decide Star-Crossed World is a D tier game. Why? I don't know. But there you go. That is my updated tier list, baby. Let's go.